Where was I when Superman died? According to a DC Comics house ad that ran at the time, Superman was slated to die in Superman issue 75, on sale November 20th, 1992. Fall of 1992 meant Superman died while I was in my first semester of college in Philadelphia, PA. There were quite a few local stores in and around Center City, Philly at the time, but no doubt I was picking up the majority of my comics habit back in my hometown of Reading, PA. I may have seen the news spread on TV or even in newspapers leading up to that pivotal issue, but honestly that part of my memory has faded into time. What I do remember about the week that Superman died are two things. One, that my older sister called me on the day of the release of Superman 75 because she had heard about the death of Superman on the radio and tried to go to Golden Eagle Comics to purchase a copy for me, but the line was way too long. The other thing I remember, to go back to that house ad and the possible on-sale street date of November 20th, is that Superman died on my birthday. Now, I didn't get my hands on a copy of that issue at the time. I had to settle for a second or third print. It would probably take more than a decade to get one of those first print, unsealed, polybagged issues of Superman 75, because of course years later, their value dropped considerably. But I did continue reading the event. In fact, I would read all of the Superman titles because of the event, and I would stick with them for several years after. So for me, the death of Superman dropped at a time in my life when I had a lot going on. I was an avid comics reader, I was starting a new time in age and location, and I was excited about the potential for this dramatic event.
You're listening to Just Another Fanboy Presents The Death of Superman, episode number 3, Under Fire. Hello and welcome to Just Another Fanboy Presents The Death of Superman. I'm your host, my name is Steven, and our introduction this week was submitted by the Podfather himself, Peter Rios from the Daily Rios podcast. You can find that podcast at thedailyrios.com, and you can follow Peter over on Twitter under the handle Peter J. Rios. And thanks, Peter, for the introduction this week. I have to admit, deep down in my soul, that I am more than a little jealous that you can say that Superman died on your birthday, and I cannot. I'm a, jealous, green-eyed monster of envy is building up inside of me. And frankly, I think that is fuel to begin a feud between our two podcasts. I don't know, maybe. We'll see. For the rest of you folks, if you'd like to submit an introduction to be used as a cold opening to a future episode of Just Another Fanboy Presents, all you got to do is record yourself answering this question. Where were you when Superman died? Then send me that file to justanotherfanboy@gmail.com. Just make sure to include in the email how you want to be identified in the episode, where the folks can find you online, and any podcast or project that you'd like me to plug. I, of course, reserve the right to refuse using any submission, as I'm not about to plug a podcast or a website from someone that's full of hate speech. So keep that in mind as well. For more information, look for the Where Were You When Superman Died bonus episode right here on this feed. All right, so today we're looking at the comics released during week 3 of the Death of Superman event 30 years ago. And in this case, as it is with most of the weeks during the event, we have just one issue to look at, and that's The Adventures of Superman number 497. This went on sale on October 27th, 1992, 30 years ago today. It had a cover price of $1.25, and the title of this issue is Under Fire. It was written by Jerry Ordway, pencils by Tom Grummett, inks by Doug Hazlewood. The letters were by Albert DeGuzman, and the colorist was Glenn Whitmore. Now, as I did in the previous episode, I'm going to read you the synopsis of this issue from over on dcfandom.com. Unfortunately, the synopsis is quite sparse. It simply says, after Doomsday takes out the whole Justice League, Superman is left to take him on alone. That's it. That's the synopsis. I mean, yeah, basically that's what happened in the issue, but good Lord, there's just so much more. So we open up where we left off in the last issue, and that's the house of Mitch and his mother and baby sister that has been destroyed by Doomsday. The Justice League is out of commission. Doomsday has leapt off into the far distance, somewhere off onto the horizon, and Superman has flown after him. As the previous issue ended, Mitch was calling out for Superman to come help because what's left of their home is on fire and it's about to collapse in on Mitch's mom and baby sister, and he is unable to do anything about it. So that's where we are as this issue opens, and we get a bit of narration from Mitch. He is calling out to Superman. He's losing his voice because of all the smoke. Some of the Justice League members are starting to stir, but they really can't do anything. They're barely able to stand, and that's when the home actually begins to collapse. Now, we do see a bit of Superman up there in the sky with Doomsday, and he's thinking to himself that, yes, Mitch, I can hear you, but he's kind of hoping that there's somebody left from the Justice League that can help this kid out. And he has popped Doomsday a fresh one, and then he turns to look back at the remnants of the home, and he can see that no one from the Justice League is able to help. Before he can zip on back there and help, however, Doomsday is back in the sky, leaping at Superman, and he belts Superman a good one. Mitch, who we're still getting narration from, he can actually see them up there in the sky. He says, in his narration that they're rather far away, but he could see that Superman had turned to look back, and Mitch was really happy about that. That's it, fine, that's it, great, he can see us, he's coming back. But then he sees Doomsday punch him. He says that sounds like thunder, and that's when the house starts to collapse in on his mom. But suddenly Bloodwind is there to save her, and he holds the wall up that is about to fall in on her just as Superman does finally arrive, scoops her and the baby up and gets them out of the house. Now, the EMTs have arrived, and various members of the Justice League are being loaded onto ambulances. Superman, of course, suggests to Mitch that he get his mom into an ambulance and to the hospital. He tells the EMTs to contact Maxwell Lord over in New York City because he will have all the medical records for these members of the Justice League. And then before he can turn and go back to return to Doomsday, Guy Gardner, who is laying there on a gurney about to be loaded into the back of an ambulance, reaches out and grabs a hold of Superman and basically tells him, as well as he can, because he's very out of it. He's been beaten pretty bad. He's not as bad as the Blue Beetle, who is in a coma, but he tells Superman that he better go get this Doomsday guy. Basically, I don't have it in front of me, so I can't remember exactly what he says, but ultimately he's just saying, don't hold back. Put this Doomsday guy in a pine box, or I'm going to come find you and kick your butt myself. And Superman is basically like, I'll handle it, guy. You just get to the hospital. You worry about yourself. We get a bit from Lois Lane, who is at the WGBS building, the television station that Cat Grant is a part of. She's there. She's trying to get into a studio to get Jimmy Olsen. Apparently, Jimmy Olsen, at this point during his comic book history, is the star of his own TV show in which he plays a superhero called Turtle Boy. And they are taping an episode, and Lois is not allowed in the studio because they're in the middle of taping. And so there's a security guard outside the studio, and he's not allowing Lois in. Cat Grant shows up, and she uses her clout as a reporter for WGBS to muscle their way into the studio, telling the security guard that she will take responsibility if they interrupt anything. And we not only learn that Jimmy Olsen is starring in his own TV show, but that he's also doing it while he is on his lunch break from the Daily Planet, and he's actually been gone for 3 hours. And Lois yells at him and tells him that if the boss, Perry, finds out what's happening, Jimmy's going to be fired. And Jimmy's like, gee whiz, Lois, this is my first TV show. Come on. And she tells him that they have been assigned the Doomsday Story, and there's a helicopter waiting for them, and they need to go. And Jimmy is of course, he takes the pictures. Before they leave, however, they get a chance to watch a bit of the news because a news break breaks into the Brave and the Bold. And it's reported on the news that 30 people have died already in this doomsday rampage, that hundreds have been injured, and that Doomsday appears to be making a path, a straight path, crossing from Ohio through New York State. And the guy says, some theorize that the creature is on a course straight to or through Metropolis. And we go to Metropolis, to the LexCorp building, Lex Tower, or whatever the frick it's called. And Lex Luthor is there with Supergirl. Now, if you remember from episode 0, at this point, Lex Luthor is, he's young. He's probably in his mid to late 20s, and he has long red hair. This is a clone of Lex Luthor. But as far as anyone else is concerned, this is Lex Luthor II, Luthor's long-lost, estranged son who grew up in Australia. And Supergirl and Lex apparently have a relationship, the kind of relationship where they kiss in bed late into the night and do other things. And so they're watching this news report, and Supergirl wants to go. She wants to go help Superman, but Lex, he won't allow her to do that. He doesn't tell her, no, you stay here, I command it. But basically he says, he tries to be nice about it. She thinks I believe, boy, I'm getting all excited here. I believe that she also believes that he is Lex Luthor II. She doesn't know who he really is, and she is so madly in love with him. But he basically says, no, he needs his Supergirl there with him. And besides, they need a contingency plan in case this menace makes his way to Metropolis. So we get back to Doomsday. And again, I believe at this point, Doomsday is in New York State, making a beeline toward Metropolis. He does not appear to have any goal in mind other than just moving forward and destroying anything in his path. Maxima from the Justice League shows up, who had left the fight to take Blue Beetle into the hospital. She's a super powerful character. I don't know much about her other than the fact that she is an alien princess of some sort, and she has one boot that goes up to her thigh, and the other boot only goes up to her ankle, which for somebody who likes things, a bit of symmetry in art, I find her costume, it hurts. It hurts my soul. It hurts my heart to look at, because I need both of those boots to be the same length. It drives me crazy that one is longer than the other one. But she is super strong, so she takes the fight to Doomsday. She is I think I mentioned this on the previous episode, that she's very much kind of a warrior or part of a warrior race. She's all about war and fighting, and she's basically like a human-looking Klingon. She looks like a human. She's got red hair. She's very fine-looking, but she's got the mentality of a Klingon when it comes to honor and fighting and all that junk. So she is again. She's taken the fight to Doomsday. Superman joins up with her. At one point, she is just whooping up on old Doomsday, and Superman admonishes her because she knocks Doomsday into a building or a house or something like that. And Superman's like, whoa, settle down. You could hurt people. There are innocent people around. You have to keep that in mind. And Maxima just is angry. And, she basically tells him to F off, but, in a nice way that gets by the Comic Code Authority. But she does take a swing at him for daring to tell her how to take the fight to somebody. And he catches her fist in air, and he's like, settle down. I'm just telling you to look where you're swinging, keep that kind of stuff in mind. And so the two keep fighting Doomsday. There's at one point a couple of military helicopters show up and they try to help take Doomsday out. At one point, while Doomsday has, basically knocked Maxima and Superman around and they're kind of getting their second wind, this helicopter shows up and it fires 3 missiles at Doomsday, but Doomsday sees them and is able to leap through the helicopter as they are firing their missiles. So he's on the ground. The helicopter shows up and they're like, oh no, he sees us, but we have a missile lock. So fire. And by the time they get that out, Doomsday's in the air. He has leapt through the helicopter, destroying it, and the missiles have gone wild. Suddenly Superman's there. He saves both of the pilots. He grabs one of the missiles out of the air and directs it towards Doomsday. It blows up and knocks Doomsday to the ground, giving Superman a moment to get the pilots to safety and grab the other 2 missiles before they blow up anybody or anything. Superman does mention in his brain at one point that Doomsday appears to only be about destruction, that the only thing that's on Doomsday's brain is destroying, killing, that kind of thing. And there's also a moment during the book where Superman, again, in his brain, wonders if Doomsday is getting stronger. It appears to him that the more that they battle, the stronger Doomsday appears to be getting, or Doomsday has been holding back. I don't know, or Superman doesn't know, but he realizes, or it feels to him at one point, that Doomsday appears to be getting stronger. And there's also a moment in this book, in this issue anyway, where Superman declares that he's no longer holding back. But there are a number of moments in this issue where, again, they kind of remind us that while Doomsday is just destruction personified, he doesn't give a crap about anything or anyone around him. Superman, on the other hand, has to think about the innocent people around him as he is fighting Doomsday. So even though he declares that he is no longer holding back, to a certain extent, he still has to hold back, because it's not like they're out in the middle of nowhere. If they were out in the middle, of a big desert, then Superman probably would really just lay it on thick and really go to town on Doomsday. But because he has to basically have part of his brain in the fight and the other part of his brain thinking about the innocent people around them and the collateral damage and all of that, that does give Superman a bit of a disadvantage at this point. But as the issue is wrapping up and Superman and Maxima are battling Doomsday, they find themselves at a gas station, basically, because Superman knocks Doomsday into a gas pump as he is thinking to himself that Maxima appears to be reveling in this fight. She seems to really be enjoying it. But as he knocks Doomsday into this gas pump, gas goes flying into the air, and Maxima pulls a light post out of its base and sparks go flying, and then the gas station explodes. And it's a wonderful panel. I'm gonna talk about the art here as soon as we're done with the story, but it leaves Superman and Maxima unconscious. Doomsday is still very much awake, and he just goes trudging off into the distance, still making his way forward toward Metropolis, across New York State and toward Metropolis. That's when a new character to the story shows up, a guy by the name of Guardian. I don't know a lot about him. Even my memories from the last time I read this are very sparse. He appears to be somewhat of a Captain America type guy. And in fact, I believe he is from the World War II era. And this version of the Guardian is actually a clone that was created from the Cadmus Project. I don't know if they're called the Project, but I know they're called Cadmus. And he comes rolling up on his motorcycle. Like Captain America, the Guardian has a shield. I don't think he has any superpowers. I think he's basically a regular dude, or maybe he's slightly enhanced like Captain America is. I really feel like from my memories, this guy is basically, without the America motif, he is basically DC's version of Captain America because he is from World War II. He has a shield. His shield is shaped like the type of badge a police officer would have, like a New York City police officer. And I believe he has that because he too used to be a police officer back during the days of the Second War. He even comes rolling up on a motorcycle, and the shield is on the front of the motorcycle, just like Captain America used to always do back in the 80s. He had his shield that would sit on the front of the motorcycle. And we actually saw that in one of the Captain America movies, the first Captain America movie, in fact. But he arrives as Superman and Maxima are waking from being unconscious. There's destruction all around. Guardian is asking Superman if, basically he's like a Monday morning quarterback. He's coming in after the game and he's questioning the job that Superman did, from the sidelines. He's all like, was all this necessary? This destruction? Wasn't there some other way? And right away, I'm just like, shut up. You were not here. Don't start questioning Superman. Don't act like you know how to, how this situation could have gone down. But Superman responds that there's always another way. But it doesn't alter the fact, he says, that he still has to go out there and stop Doomsday. And he says, and now I realize that I have to do it alone. And that's where the issue ends. So seeing Guardian in this issue does make me remember, again, this event is being told in the 4 Superman books that are being published at this time in 92. And each of these books, while there are certain elements that weave in and out of each of these books, for example, characters like Lois Lane and Superman, some of the main characters of the Superman mythos, Lois, Jimmy, Perry White, the Daily Planet, Lex Luthor. There are these supporting characters such as the Guardian that are really more kind of part of the individual titles. So the Guardian is a supporting character in the Adventures of Superman. And I feel like whenever we see characters like the Guardian and Cadmus, anything to do with Cadmus and the characters that kind of have something to do with that part of the story, we're only going to see that in the Adventures of Superman. And we'll see that with a lot of these books. With each of these 4 books, while they have the main story that's flowing through all 4 of them, there are certain elements and supporting characters that will only show up in the book that they are part of. Which on the one hand I find is kind of odd, but whatever. It's the way that the books are set up. Now this is written by Jerry Ordway, so we have now our 3rd writer coming into the death of Superman. At first I was a bit confused that maybe because the way this issue starts off, the way the issue, okay, let me talk like a normal human being for a second. The way the previous issue, Superman 74, the way that was left off, Superman is in the air and he's about to catch up to Doomsday, and he hears Mitch back at the house that just got destroyed. He can hear Mitch calling for him, and he's trying to decide at that point. The cliffhanger is, do I go back and save Mitch and his mom and baby, or do I keep going forward and stop Doomsday and potentially save hundreds of other people? But then when this issue opens up, Superman is fighting Doomsday in midair. So it's not a seamless transition from one book to the other. There's also a few moments in this book where, like, Superman at one point refers to Doomsday as Mr. Destructo, and one of the helicopter pilots keeps referring to Doomsday as Bubba. And at first I thought, okay, did Jerry Ordway not get the memo that Doomsday is now called Doomsday? That was established in the previous issue or the second issue into the storyline, and then further established in the 3rd issue, which was the Superman 74. So Booster Gold refers to the creature as if Doomsday has arrived, or it's like Doomsday down there or something like that, as that Justice League issue is ending. And then as Superman 74 is opening, Superman basically says, what did Booster refer to this creature as? Oh yeah, Doomsday. And so then for the rest of the issue, he's known as Doomsday. And so Superman, like I said, at one point he refers to him as Mr. Destructo and calls him the creature or the monster. And I'm just like, I start getting really confused. Again, like I said, did Jerry Ordway not know that it's okay to refer to this dude as Doomsday at this point? But Mitch does refer to him as Doomsday before Superman starts calling him the creature and Mr. Destructo and whatnot. But I was a bit confused there at first. Probably would not have been if I was reading this week to week, other than kind of back to back. But I just found that kind of odd. You know, it's always one of those things that you run up against when you're reading a crossover story like this that has multiple writing teams on it. You know, the hope is that everything ties together seamlessly, but there's always the danger of, you know, maybe certain issues that, well, for example, maybe my fear was, or my concern was at first, that maybe Jerry Ordway wrote this issue before Dan Jurgens wrote the Justice League and the Superman issue. And so there was some confusion there. But once I got a bit further, that fear was gone. While it's not a seamless transition between Superman 74 and the Adventures of Superman 497, it's still, you know, again, and we're only 4 issues in to this storyline, but it's Mike Carlin so far is doing a really good job of keeping everything tied together. And so it was a baseless fear I had, but I felt it was worth mentioning because it's just one of those things that happen. And I find that the more modern comics these days do a really bad job of keeping stuff tied together when you have multiple writing teams doing a crossover storyline. But anyway, other than that baseless fear I had, it was another great issue. The art in this issue is gorgeous. The art team of Tom Grummett and Doug Hazlewood. This is my favorite art team of the 4 Superman titles that are being released at this point. Big fan of Tom Grummett. He has almost a John Byrne / Jim Lee thing going on. It's very classic. It's a very classic look that for me, you can't help but, I mean, it's unmistakably, when I see this art, it's unmistakable that it's Tom Grummett. So there is a bit of a style there that you recognize as Tom Grummett, but it hasn't quite hit that 90s flair that has started to erupt at this time, where a lot of artists and a lot of books start emphasizing the art over the story, and the art begins to look rather ridiculous because of that. That's not Tom Grummett at all. It's like he has a foot in that classic house style and then a foot in the more modern at the time stylistic approach that really just makes him an excellent artist. Again, it reminds me a lot of John Byrne in the fact that many of the men's faces and women's faces, they all look the same. You know, John Byrne has kind of that curse where if you took Steve Rogers and Tony Stark and, you know, various Marvel male characters and put them together, took away their facial hair and took away their hair, they would look almost exactly the same. Now, I mean, that's not necessarily 100% true. You do see, you know, if you really study a lot of that, you can see some subtle differences between characters, and you get that here with Tom Grummett as well. But at the same time, there's a lot of similarities, and it doesn't take me out of anything. Again, I'm a big fan. He's probably in my top 10, top 15 when it comes to artists of all time, maybe top 20. But these were the issues that I always looked forward to when I was reading through this event for the first time back in the 90s. And eventually, when we get to the point where Superman has died, and I'm not giving anything away here, people. These aren't spoilers. This is a 30-year-old story. When Superman dies and they introduce the 4 Supermen that the readers at the time are trying to determine, you know, is one of these the real Superman? They split each one of these Supermen into the 4 books, and the Adventures of Superman has Superboy, and it was my favorite title of the 4. And a lot of that is because Tom Grummett and then Jerry Ordway. I think Jerry Ordway is a great writer. And the Superboy book of the 4 was my favorite and the one I looked forward to each and every month. I don't know that there's really a lot more that I want to say about this issue. It was a lot of fun. We learned, maybe it's hinted at, Superman wonders about the power level of Doomsday. So basically in this issue, we kind of are left to believe that possibly Doomsday gets stronger, kind of like the Hulk, maybe. The angrier he gets, the stronger he gets, or maybe it's something completely different. The more he fights, the more punishment, the more that he's hit, the stronger he gets, the more powerful he gets, which doesn't bode well for Superman. This is the issue that we get our first Lex Luthor and Supergirl appearance in this storyline, in the Death of Superman storyline. And we get our first appearance of the Guardian in this storyline. I don't recall if Jimmy Olsen had shown up yet. I don't think so. This might be our first Jimmy Olsen appearance in the Death of Superman event as well. But again, we're kind of in that part of the story where we're in the first arc, which ultimately is just a big fight between Superman and Doomsday, but a lot of destruction. As mentioned in the book, 30 people have died so far, hundreds injured, a lot of destruction, a lot of damage, and it's just going to get bigger from here. But yeah, I don't think I have anything else to say. So instead, I'll just thank all y'all for listening to today's episode of Just Another Fanboy Presents. If you want to drop me a line and ask me a question or provide a bit of feedback or even both, you can email me at justanotherfanboy@gmail.com, or you can use the Just Another Fanboy voice line at 785-318-6673 to leave a voicemail or send me a text. You can also reach out to me on Twitter by using the handle @StephenOrElse, or join in on all the fun over at the forum at forum.justanotherfanboy.com. Or frankly, I would love it if you did both. And hey, if you feel up to throwing a little support my way, you can join the Patreon at patreon.com/StephenROr for just $1 a month. And in return, I'm going to do my best to get you podcast episodes just like this one before anybody else gets them. Anybody else but the patrons, that is. I also invite you to subscribe to the Steven Says Stuff newsletter. This is a free Substack where I send you every podcast episode I create each week right to your inbox the morning of release. And you know what? If you listen to this show on Apple Podcasts, I would certainly appreciate it if you would give the show a rating over there. All the links that I mention here will be in the show notes. So if you've already taken the time to scramble around the house and find a pen and paper and write all that down, I apologize. It's right there in the show notes. Sorry. So yeah, join me back here next week when we'll be looking at Action Comics number 684, Doomsday is Near. But until then, I'm Steven, and I'm just another fanboy. Be nice to each other, folks. I'm out.